The forests of Central Africa once whispered to a different people. Before the iron-tipped tools, before the drumbeats and rhythmic chants that would one day stretch from the Great Lakes to the Atlantic shores, there lived older tongues, older songs. But something began to stir deep in the heart of the continent, something that would ripple like silent rivers through the land, changing its people, its landscapes, its very soul. Historians would later call it the Bantu expansion. But to those who lived through it, it was simply life unraveling and reweaving itself. Few alive today grasp the enormity of what happened, how entire worlds were displaced not by the clash of empires or swords, but by the patient, persistent migration of farmers, herders, and dreamers seeking new beginnings. This is the story of the Great Displacement, a migration so vast that it redrew the human map of Africa forever. At first, there was only silence, the heavy green silence of the rainforests, broken only by bird calls and the low murmur of hunter-gatherer tribes. These were the peoples of the Central African Basin, the ancestors of the Aka, the Mbuti, the Twa. They lived lightly upon the earth, moving with the seasons, reading the invisible signs of the forest. But far to the north and east, change was brewing. Along the fertile edges of the Benue River Valley, a new way of life was taking root. Here, a people we now call the Bantu, though they would not have known that name, began to shape a revolution with nothing more than fire-hardened axes, seeds, and dreams of better harvests. They discovered the power of yams, oil palms, and millet. They tamed goats and chickens. They learned the alchemy of iron. And with these tools, they unlocked an entirely new rhythm of life, a rhythm built on settlement, surplus, and growth. No one can say precisely why they began to move. Was it the slow pressure of growing populations? The quiet but unrelenting pull of fertile lands just beyond the horizon? Or perhaps it was simply in their blood, the restless spirit of migration that beats in all humankind. Whatever the cause, they began to spread, trickling outwards like water seeping through cracked stone. The first waves moved south and east, slipping into the dense forests that loomed beyond the savannas. It was not an easy transition. The great rainforests of the Congo were not welcoming. Thick, tangled, and alive with dangers both seen and unseen. The early Bantu migrants had to adapt, abandoning cattle herding in favor of new crops like plantains and bananas, better suited to the humid climate. They learned to navigate the rivers, the great arteries of Central Africa, becoming masters of canoes and quiet water roads. As they moved, they did not sweep away the older peoples like a tidal wave. It was slower, more insidious. 1,000 small interactions, 1,000 negotiations and displacements. Some indigenous groups assimilated, adopting Bantu languages and farming practices. Others retreated deeper into the forests, clinging to the old ways as best they could. A few resisted and died. But mostly, the change was not a war, but a slow erasure, like footprints vanishing beneath drifting sand. By the time the migration reached full momentum, the landscape itself began to transform. Villages sprouted like mushrooms along riverbanks and clearings. Ironsmiths set up smoky workshops, their forges breathing black clouds into the sky. Farmers burned and cleared patches of forest, sowing yams and cassava. Herds of goats and chickens clattered through the clearings. Language, too, mutated. Hundreds of Bantu dialects blossomed, each a fingerprint of a new people in a new place. Still, the displacement was not merely physical, it was cultural, spiritual. The hunter-gatherer's intricate knowledge of the forest, the sacred groves, the secret medicines, the unseen spirits of leaf and stone, was slowly marginalized. In their place rose new cosmologies, beliefs shaped by agriculture, by iron, by settlement. The gods of the wild gave way to the gods of the hearth. Through the centuries, the Bantu migrations continued in waves. Some followed the Congo River westward, reaching the Atlantic coast. Others pushed south, eventually spilling into what is now Angola and beyond. Everywhere they went, the pattern repeated: encounter, conflict, absorption, displacement. In the shadows of this great movement, echoes of the original inhabitants remained. Even today, the pygmy groups of Central Africa, the Mbuti, the Aka, the Twa, bear testament to a world before the Bantu, living vestiges of ancient lineages that once blanketed the heart of Africa. But they are marginalized now, their numbers diminished, their lands encroached upon. They became ghosts in the forest their ancestors once ruled. Archaeology paints a faint, fragmentary picture of this transformation. Pottery styles shift, iron tools appear, languages diversify. Oral traditions, too, tell fragments of the story. Myths of strangers arriving, of lost lands, of gods abandoned and adopted anew. But the greatest testimony is the human map itself. Today, over 310 million people across sub-Saharan Africa speak languages descended from those early Bantu tongues. From Cameroon to Kenya, from the Congo to South Africa, the Bantu legacy is written in every word, every village name, every drumbeat and harvest festival. It is the unspoken skeleton of African history. Yet behind this grand tapestry lies the quieter truth, that the shaping of history is so often not the clash of armies or the declarations of kings, but the slow, everyday decisions of ordinary people. A family seeking better land. A village split after a poor harvest. A smith teaching his son to forge iron in a new village. A woman planting yams by a river none of her ancestors had ever seen. These were the architects of the Bantu expansion, not warriors, not conquerors, but wanderers and survivors. And the displaced peoples, the forest dwellers, the forgotten tribes, were not wiped from history in a moment, but worn away across generations, like the slow hollowing of a stone by dripping water. And still, the rivers flow. Still, the forests whisper. And if you listen closely, if you walk the shadowed paths of the Congo or sit by the fire in a village by the Great Lakes, you can still hear faint echoes of that ancient collision, the mingling songs of those who came and those who were pushed aside. The true nature of the Bantu expansion was not one of violent conquest, as some might expect from the word displacement. It was subtler, deeper, and ultimately more enduring. It was a slow wave of migration that transformed cultures not through swords, but through seeds, through songs, through settlement. It redrew the human geography of an entire continent, not by bloodshed alone, but by the everyday miracles of adaptation, resilience, and hope. The displacement of Central Africa's indigenous peoples was not a single catastrophe, but a gradual unraveling, a long twilight that few living could name as it unfolded around them. The Bantu expansion teaches us that history's greatest forces often move unseen, until long after the world they shaped has forgotten what it lost. History is not just written in books, it lives in languages, in landscapes, in the faces and stories of peoples still walking the earth today. The story of the Bantu migrations and the quiet displacement they caused reminds us that migration and adaptation are as old as humanity itself, and that every language spoken, every culture alive today, carries echoes of those who came before. If this story moved you, there is more to discover. The voices of the displaced, the songs of survival, and the hidden histories of Africa's forests still wait to be heard. Dig deeper, listen harder, because in remembering the silent rivers of history, we find ourselves